Live from Leimert Park, USA, I'm Tavis Smiley, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to see you and me back in stride again. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you right now to download our app at KBLA 1580. Download the app and listen to us live anywhere in the world, but only if you download our app right now at KBLA 1580. Should you miss us any day in real time, check out the podcast of our program by going to the app, the website, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, so many places to get the podcast and listen at your leisure should you miss us any day in real time. But I am delighted to have you along live with us today for the next 3 hours. You can also watch the live stream of this program by tapping on the KBLA TV icon on our app or by going to our YouTube channel. Let me also finally invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. Another great show on tap for you today. Before I jump into the rundown of today's program and get to our first guest, let me just start by saying thank you to every single one of you. Today commences year 3 for KBLA Talk 1580. We celebrated our second anniversary yesterday. Had a wonderful outing yesterday with hundreds of people who came out to support us. And let me, again, start by thanking our sponsors for making that big second anniversary celebration possible yesterday. SEIU 2015, SEIU 721, the Black Pack, Holly Mitchell, our supervisor. We thank you. The Weingart Foundation, Caltrans, Jazzy J's Sweets, and they were good. And K-Girls Catering, and it was good. It was quite a festival yesterday, quite a moment, with, again, hundreds of our listeners and supporters who came out yesterday to celebrate the second anniversary of this black-owned and operated talk radio station, the only one west of the Mississippi. And I want to just thank all of you who came out yesterday and supported us, but especially those, of course, who are listening right now and always listen to KBLA Talk 1580. This has been quite a journey over these last couple of years. A startup is a startup is a startup. It's not easy, particularly in a market that has almost 200 radio stations, a lot of competition. You're trying to break through. It's never been done before. And yet here we are 2 years later, again, today commencing year 3 of KBLA Talk 1580. Hope you enjoyed Dominique's program today, live from South Africa. She'll be there for about a week or so, broadcasting live here every single day. So only on KBLA can you hear that kind of programming brought to us again live every day for the next week or so from South Africa with Dominique DePrima. And so we got a lot going on here at KBLA Talk 1580. A great deal more about this tomorrow, but I can tease it right now. Just got word of this yesterday, in fact. An independent survey for the second consecutive year conducted by Eviderus has found that KBLA Talk 1580 is still, for the second year in a row, the most trusted, credible, and reliable talk station in Southern California. That's a big deal for us and for our audience. And so we are just pleased to have learned late yesterday, in fact, on Juneteenth, that the data was complete. We'll have more details about that. A big announcement, I'm sure, tomorrow with a press release giving more detail about that reality. But just a big deal around here for us to be regarded by you and by Southern California as the most trusted, the most credible, and the most reliable talk station for 2 years running. And we take that mantle seriously. So, again, a great deal going on here at KBLA Talk 1580. A lot to talk about. We'll get, again, to more of those details tomorrow. When I get more details, you will have them. But we're glad to know that this study has found that people respect what we are attempting to do here every single day on this station and indeed around the nation. That said, let me give you a rundown of today's program. And, again, we'll talk more about our anniversary yesterday and how much fun we had and some other things that I want to share with you as we move through these next 3 hours. But let me tell you what's happening for the next 3 hours. In our second hour, the roots of the black working class. Dr. Blair L.M. Kelly argues that a tide of commentary of the almost mythic white working class has obscured the hard labor and even the very existence of entire groups of everyday American workers, including black folk. We'll talk about that in hour 2. the black working class and its roots. A great deal to unpack with Dr. Kelly when we get to our second hour today. In our third hour, two conversations as we introduce you to a couple of the new hosts you'll be hearing on KBLA Talk 1580 as we launch year 3 today, as I said moments ago, and all week long, we've got new shows I want to bring your attention to. On the top of hour 3, a conversation with Dr. Tyrone Howard about his new show Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. It's called You Must Learn. We'll talk to Dr. Howard at the top of hour 3. And on the B side of hour 3, we'll speak with the host of RSVP with Jill Monroe, which premieres tonight, in fact, tonight at 9 p.m., a new program called RSVP with Jill Monroe. We'll talk to her on the back side of hour 3. Look forward to that hour. And so we'll tell you all about these new shows in hour 3, and later this week we'll introduce you to a few more new hosts that you'll be hearing around here on KBLA Talk 1580 as we move into year 3. That said, let's commence today's program talking politics with Washington Post columnist Philip Bump. Philip, welcome back to the program, sir. Good to have you on. How are you today?
Of course. Happy to be here. I'm well.
Good to have you on. Thank you for your time. Let me jump right in. Just want to get some housekeeping matters out of the way. Thank you for your patience on that. There's a lot to talk about politically, and I suspect the big news, the biggest news, I guess depends on where you sit. But one of the pieces that we have to talk about immediately is the trial. The trial date has now been set for Donald Trump. It's set for August 14. And as you know, Philip, this U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, who was appointed by Donald Trump, many people thought that she might drag her feet on this. And it's still the case that she can once everything begins. There's no way this thing actually starts on the 14th of August. For those who know how these trials work, there'll be delays. There'll be delays for this, delays for that, delays for the other. But the fact that she actually set this court date so soon from now on August 14th has people wondering whether or not she's going to show up in ways that we thought she wouldn't. All that said, Philip Bump, your thoughts?
I mean, it certainly is the case. This were to trial on August 14th, I think everyone would be sort of flabbergasted, right? That is a turnaround.
Let's okay. We got Philip. We got a horrible phone line. That's not the way to start year 3. I'm laughing. I'm laughing, although it's not funny. Dominique came live from South Africa this morning, and she sounded like she was in the studio here from South Africa. And I got Philip Bump on a phone line from Washington. It sounds horrible. Technology, go figure. When we come forward, we'll get this phone line straightened out. Maybe I should send Philip to South Africa and do him live from there. I'm Tavis, Smiley. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, and we're glad about it. It's June, Black Music Month, a different black artist every day whose music we feature all 3 hours of our program. Today, that artist is the one and the only, I miss her so much, Whitney Houston.
Talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
You're listening to K-Trip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like watering your lawn during the hottest time of the day and leaky faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Trip.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here for KBLA Talk 1580. We're live in Los Angeles at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. And I'm speaking to some of the attendees today to see why it was so important for them to be here.
Yeah, this is Lathan and Tyler. Main reason that's very important for me to be here is just to leave a legacy for my kids. Black wealth, generational wealth is what we need in our community. You know, Chase. Someone has to take the lead. They're showing big business like Chase cares, and they're putting their money where their mouth is at. So it's good to see big institution like Chase giving a lifting hand, to the community. And, you got to respect that. It makes me want to bank with Chase and, give them, another look if I go to another institution. I actually see what Chase is doing for the community.
That's right. Chase is doing their part to help advance black wealth. For more money support, tune in every day from 12 to 2 to KBLA Talk 1580's Midday Money Chain, right here.
At Lowe's, we're always bringing pros more ways to save. Right now, buy a Flex stackable tool storage system for just $249. That's $50 in total savings. Plus, earn up to 2 times the bonus points per dollar when you buy select Flex tools. Shop in-store or online for deals you can't beat. Because Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Valid 6/8 to 6/21. While supplies last. U.S. only. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Valid through 6/30. Subject to change.
Get in zone. AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
I think my battery's dead.
With free battery testing and charging, AutoZone is here to help.
Get in zone. AutoZone.
What if I need a new one?
We have the right batteries right here at America's #1 battery destination.
Get in zone.
And what if I don't know how to connect it?
No problem. We have a how-to for you at AutoZone.com.
Get in zone. AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
Hey LA, I'm Pastor Xavier Thompson inviting you to join us for a special night of compassion and community rally for Dr. Mark Ridley Thomas at the Southern Missionary Baptist Church, 4678 West Adams Boulevard in the city of Los Angeles, Friday, June the 23rd, 7 p.m. This will be a time for the community to undergird Dr. Mark Ridley Thomas and his family as we approach the upcoming court hearing, which will determine whether or not he gets a new trial. We are urging all constituents, supporters, partners, friends, and well-wishers, those who seek justice for this courageous champion of our community, to join us. Friday, June the 23rd, 7 o'clock p.m., the Southern Missionary Baptist Church, 4678 West Adams Boulevard. Let's encourage Dr. Mark Ridley Thomas with our presence, participation, and our prayers. See you there.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black. Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
If tomorrow is Judgment Day, sing, mommy. And I'm standing on the front line, and the Lord asks me what I did with my life, I will say I spent it with you. If I wake up in world,
I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. The best of Whitney Houston all 3 hours today as we continue to celebrate June as Black Music Month. And nobody did it quite like Whitney. And again, we're going to be featuring her stuff, some of the best of her stuff, all 3 hours of our program today. Now, back to Philip Bump. Well, hope we've gotten this phone line thing straightened out. Philip, talk to me now. Can you hear me now, sir?
I can hear you fine. I see what I did is I flew to South Africa real quick so I could make sure we had a good connection.
Well, it's working. It sounds a whole lot better. I thank you for doing that. Back to what I was saying earlier. The Trump trial, the federal criminal trial, I should say the federal criminal trial, because there's so many cases, it seems, that Donald Trump will be up against in the coming months. But the federal criminal trial brought by Jack Smith, the special prosecutor on this documents issue at Mar-a-Lago. That case is now set to begin on August 14. I was saying earlier, for those who may have just tuned in, there are many of us who did not expect this to happen so quickly, so swiftly. There's been a lot of commentary about this district judge, Eileen Cannon, who was appointed by Donald Trump, and all that we might expect or perhaps should expect with regard to foot dragging. Now, again, that may happen once we get inside of this case, but many people are shocked to wake up this morning and realize that the case has been set to begin on August 14. What do you make of that, Philip Bump?
Yeah, I understand that sentiment absolutely, but and obviously, if it were the case that the trial began on August 14th, that would be pretty remarkable. I don't think anyone really expects it to, right? I mean, this is not only an unusual case sort of broadly and theoretically, it is an unusual case in that it involves a lot of classified documents. And so there are processes that have to be put into place in order for those documents to be reviewed by defense counsel, for those documents to be cleared by the government, and eventually to ensure that the jury can look at them. There are different precautions that need to be added here, which adds this layer of bureaucracy, if you will, that will need to occur before the trial can actually begin. And then, of course, you've got Donald Trump, who is extremely eager to have this thing be delayed until at least past the 2024 election. His only hope at this point is he's reelected president, and that he can sort of wriggle out of the news that way. But this is something that he has a lot of experience in dragging these things out. He has lawyers that will file all sorts of petitions and all sorts of challenges every way he possibly can. The idea that this starts in less than 2 months, I think, is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I can't see with all that you just laid out this thing actually starting on August 14th, but it does again make a statement that she set the trial date so early. Do you think, none of us can get inside of her head, but given that she's been spanked a couple times by the appellate court for rulings that she's made, given that she is not the most experienced jurist, again, all this commentary has been written in the days preceding about, again, her lack of experience and the trouble she's gotten herself in before being overruled by federal courts. Do you think that she was attempting to make a statement by setting it for the 14th of August?
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly is the case. I mean, look, no one wants to go down in history as a failure or someone who's inept, right? Mm-hmm. Not everyone is able to recognize their own ineptitude at times, and I'm not saying she's inept, mm-hmm. but fundamentally, I think she understands that her reputation now is as a Trump sycophant, which I don't think is what she wants it to be. This is one of the highest profile cases in American history, mm-hmm. right? This is an extraordinarily important case, and I think she very justifiably wants to do her absolute best. Even if she's sympathetic to Trump's claims, which she demonstrated some sympathies in, the beginning part of this, even if she's sympathetic to it, she also certainly doesn't want to have it be the case that this whole thing gets overturned on appeal because she was acting in a way that was, suspect. So yeah, I think she is very cognizant of what her reputation is and probably eager to try and repair that to some extent.
Yep. Speaking of Donald Trump, there are two things he said since I was last on this microphone days ago, before the weekend commenced. Let me come to those two things and get you to unpack to the extent you can, Philip Bump, these two recent statements by former President Donald Trump. So he was on Fox News last night, Juneteenth, and he offered a new explanation as to why he did not return classified documents he took with him from the White House. So the latest version of his explanation for why he did what he did was that he was very busy. He was very busy and didn't have time to separate them from his personal belongings. I quote from the former president, "Because I had boxes, I wanted to go through the boxes and get all of my personal things out. I don't want to hand that over to NARA just yet, and I was very busy, as you sort of seen," close quote. So that's the latest reason, the latest excuse for holding on these boxes. He was very busy. Philip, your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually wrote about this morning, and I think it's important to look at this through the lens of how Donald Trump approaches everything, which is a political lens, right? He always wants to ensure that his base stays loyal to him. Now I think that's existential. As I just said, his best bet of staying out of prison is to win the presidential election. I think that's much more likely than it is that he beats these charges. And so I think what he's sort of doing there is just sort of throwing out, for everyone who wants to argue on his behalf, here's an argument he can use. But fundamentally, it breaks down instantaneously. Everyone remembers that famous picture of all the documents spread on the floor at Mar-a-Lago that was taken by the FBI and became sort of the face of the Mar-a-Lago search. Those were documents that were sitting in a leather-bound box inside of his desk in his office, separated from everything else. They were just documents, and they were some of the most highly classified documents. 6 of them were labeled top secret. The 3 of those top secret, secure compartmentalized information. Those were highly classified documents sitting by themselves in a box in his office that the FBI then uncovered. He was supposed to have turned that all in June in response to a subpoena. Those documents weren't turned over. He didn't need to pull his golf shirts out of that box, right? These are documents he'd set aside and that he wanted to keep, and he didn't turn them over, and that by itself, throws that entire argument right in the trash.
He, secondly, was bragging, as you well know, about some classified documents to a group of people. And that became news about the former president actually bragging about documents that are highly classified to just random people. He has since said over the past few days that those were just news clippings. It was bravado. I was just talking, but it really wasn't classified stuff per se. I was really just referencing news clippings. Your thoughts about his parsing that statement in retrospect?
Yeah, I mean, again, so what he's doing here is he's sort of presenting evidence to the American public, right? He is making his case as though he is a lawyer and making his defense politically. The Department of Justice knows what's on that recording. There's a recording of him having this conversation. They undoubtedly have affidavits from witnesses who were sitting there with him describing what they saw Trump holding or referencing, right? You can hear apparently on this recording rustling sounds as though he's holding something else. Those people will be able to say, oh, yeah, those were just newspaper articles, or they'll be able to say, oh, yeah, I could actually see that was had, had classification markings on it. Trump doesn't have to worry about that when he's just talking to the public, right? He's not under oath. He can make up any lies he wants to make up. But the rubber hits the road once he actually gets in that courtroom. And if that's his argument in the courtroom, the government's going to be able to say, well, here's the recording. Everyone can listen to it. Here's this affidavit, or here's testimony from this witness who says that's not actually what occurred. And then he's in trouble. But again, that's not the fight I think that he's focused on. I think he's focused on this political fight.
Yep, I get that. And it's not, it's not news here to you or to this audience that he continues to appear on various news programs, continues to put out statements on his Truth Social media platform, and obviously he's running for president. So it's going to be interesting to watch how he continues on the one hand to run for president and discussing political issues that he has to address as a candidate, but taking these opportunities in the media to continue talking about this case, about this pending trial. Now, in any other situation like this, a judge would immediately issue a gag order, and you couldn't talk about this stuff. Donald Trump has not been subject as yet to a gag order, but it seems to me that this kind of, these kinds of public comments at some point are going to impact this case. That's a long way of asking whether or not you expect that at some point a judge that he appointed, Judge Cannon in this case, is going to at some point slap a gag order on him. And if in fact she does that, how does that work?
Well, I think the federal government has zero interest in having a gag order, right? Like, let's say he chooses not to testify during the trial itself, right? He can't be cross-examined. Every single thing he said, everything he said to Brett Baier on Fox News yesterday, all of that stuff is admissible, right? They can say, okay, here's what Donald Trump said. They can present that to the jury, right? All of that stuff is admissible. The federal government is happy to have him go out and talk, right? The gag order prohibition, prohibitions like that, if he started talking, for example, about sources of the intelligence. Like, we got this document because we have a spy who, is married to Vladimir Putin, stuff like that. You're going to want to put a gag order on that. But I'm sure the federal government's totally fine with having him talk as much as possible. This may be one of those unique situations in which the defendant's own lawyers are like, hey, let's get a gag order on this guy because he's certainly not doing us any good.
Now, I was going to say, his lawyers may want that gag order. I take your point that the government wants them to just keep on talking. The more you talk, the more evidence we have to bring into the trial. I get that part. But you're right. His own lawyers at some point may want to shut him up. Good luck with that. No other lawyer he's ever had has succeeded at shutting him up. But it does raise this question, though, that I want to get to, that I was reading about this morning. So much of this stuff is classified, obviously, classified information. And speaking of how delayed this case is going to be, there is a process that has to be, addressed for how his own lawyers get access to these highly classified documents. I mean, that's the point, that nobody's supposed to see this stuff. So, but his lawyers can't, reasonably defend him at trial if they don't have access to the stuff that, that the federal government is trying him for with regard to these documents and these boxes at Mar-a-Lago. It's a complicated matter. I mean, what do you know about that I don't know about how his lawyers even get approved to read these classified documents?
Yeah, no, you're right. They have to obtain security clearance. So security clearance is not impossible to obtain. There's hundreds of thousands of people in the United States that have security clearance, including, government contractors. This was the big thing when Edward Snowden had all those leaks about a decade ago, was how many people had security clearance. So it's easy to obtain. But then again, when we put this in the context of Donald Trump wanting to slow stuff down, Donald Trump also fires his attorneys every month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that he has a new set of attorneys. He doesn't yet have a full legal team for this case, but he gets a new attorney. They start next week. They go through the classification process. That takes 2 weeks. They get up to speed. They start it, and then Donald Trump fires him, and you got to start over, and you have a new lawyer, and that person has to get, there are ways in which, and, I think after a while the court would intervene and say, tough luck, you can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. That does introduce another slowing mechanism, if you will, that Donald Trump can take advantage of. But for good cause. Like, obviously, we don't want, Donald Trump to hire a Russian oligarch to be his attorney who's then granted access to these things without going through a security clearance.
Yep, point well taken. All that said, the case is set at least for August 14. Don't hold your breath about it actually starting that date. But at least we know that there is a beginning to this process. We'll see how long it takes to actually get this thing to trial. But the process will all begin on August 14th, and U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, appointed by Donald Trump, will oversee this case. We shall see, and we'll, of course, be covering it here on KBLA Talk 1580. So much more political news to get to in this first hour of Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Tuesday morning with us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now, here's the latest. In Illinois, Chicago is coming off an extremely violent Juneteenth weekend after more than 70 people were shot and 10 of them were killed. African-American Mayor Brandon Johnson says it's going to take a combined effort to address this crisis. He added that he's not looking for a police-only solution. The FDA is recommending vaccine makers to make a single-strain COVID booster shot that targets a specific Omicron spinoff. The agency said in a news release that aiming for the subvariant will be important for the fall. The monovalent shot would provide less protection against the original 2019 version of the virus, which experts don't expect to return. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Got a vehicle stolen in Culver City, Carper Lane, Block 405 northbound at Jefferson Boulevard. That's got you jammed from Century Boulevard. Crash in South LA being cleared off the right shoulder, 105 westbound past Vermont. Watch for delays at Bellflower Boulevard. And a crash report now in Compton on the 91 westbound at Santa Fe Avenue, causing delays from the 605. In Lobby, still wrapping up a crash 405 northbound at Santa Fe Avenue, causing delays from Cherry Avenue. And got a crash in Grand Avenue on the shoulder 10 westbound before the 605. That's sold from Grand Avenue.
Calling all night owls, Buffalo Wild Wings is open late. Fill up on some tasty apps with an ice cold tall beer starting at $4. Late night food and drinks start at $4 from 10 till close at B-Dubs. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void where prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers are back in action tonight in Anaheim against the Angels. The Dodgers have a lot of work to do to get right. They were swept at home by the Giants over the weekend and dropped to third in the NL West. Venus Williams won her first match over a top 50 opponent in 4 years. The 43-year-old Williams defeated Camilla Giorgi in a 3-set tiebreaker in the first round of the Birmingham Classic in England. It's also been 4 years since Williams won back-to-back matches. This is her first competition in 6 months after recovering from a hamstring injury. Draymond Green declined a player option of $27.5 million to re-sign with Golden State for next season. Green, who has played his entire 11-year NBA career with Golden State, is now an unrestricted free agent. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Have you faced discrimination in Los Angeles? The City of LA Civil Rights Department can help. They investigate private sector discrimination in LA City in commerce, education, employment, and housing. If you're facing discrimination, submit a complaint online for free at laisforeveryone.com. That's laisforeveryone.com or call 213-978-1845.
If you're a business owner or lead a nonprofit that's between 26 and 49 employees, please listen. Lendistry is proud to announce a new program whereby small businesses and nonprofits may qualify for reimbursement of COVID sick leave expenses incurred in 2021 or 2022. This program is administered by the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. Eligibility criteria apply and funding is limited. For more information, visit COVIDPaidSick.com. If you're a business owner or lead a nonprofit that has between 26 and 49 employees, please listen. Lendistry is proud to announce a new program whereby small businesses and nonprofits may qualify for reimbursement of COVID sick leave expenses incurred in 2021 or 2022. This program is administered by the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. For more information, visit COVIDPaidSick.com.
As a dentist, I know what my patients are saying when they really can't speak. She says her gums have been bleeding. Is there anything you can do? Absolutely. You can try New Crest Gum Detoxify and Restore. Yup, New Crest Gum Detoxify and Restore is professionally designed to start healing gums from day one. Right. Healthy gums, healthy mouth.
Crest Gum Detoxify and Restore. Smile, Crest has you covered.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis, Smiley. That's Whitney Houston as we celebrate June as Black Music Month. We're playing the best of Whitney Houston all 3 hours of our program today, as we do every day during the month of June. We pick a featured artist, and they become our artist in residence, as we say around here. And so today, Whitney Houston is our featured artist of the day. So the best of Whitney all 3 hours today. Again, in June, Black Music Month. I can't imagine the soundtrack of my life without Whitney on it. Yesterday, we had some great artists who performed at our second anniversary celebration. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the second and third hours of our program. But love music, as I'm sure you do as well. In this hour, we continue our conversation now with Philip Bump, Washington Post columnist, talking about so many trending political stories over the weekend that we wanted to get to. Philip, before I move off this Donald Trump thing, one other quick thing on this. You said earlier in this conversation, and I made a note and I didn't get to it quick enough before news, traffic, and sports, but that's why I'm glad to have a whole hour with you. You mentioned that Trump's only hope to avoid all of this, or to at least not go to prison immediately, is to be elected president. And so he wants to delay this federal criminal trial now set for August 14th. I get that. The audience gets it. And yet it occurred to me that Donald Trump does have a second hope. It's one thing for him to get elected and perhaps pardon himself, but at the very least delay this while he's president. But the other option is for another Republican to be elected. So if Donald Trump ends up not being the nominee, one would believe that he would work vociferously. He'd be vociferous, rather, and would work aggressively to make sure that a Republican, in fact, is elected. There's no chance that he gets pardoned if Joe Biden or some other Democrat gets elected president. But if another Republican were to be elected, there's still a chance that Donald Trump could be pardoned by that president. So his being elected is not necessarily his only hope. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's true. You raise a good point. I mean, I do think that we would be in fairly unknown terrain if Donald Trump were to not get the nomination at this point. The only time in which he's been in a position where it seemed like he was trailing in the primaries came after the Iowa caucus in 2016. He was expected to win the Iowa caucus. He lost to Ted Cruz. That night he was very gracious, and then the next day he started attacking Ted Cruz, calling him lying Ted Cruz, saying that he cheated, saying there was fraud, right? So I find it very hard to believe that Donald Trump could lose the nomination to someone and then go out and campaign on their behalf and act graciously toward them, or try and turn his base, make sure they were turning out in support of a Republican candidate. This may be different. You may be right. If Ron DeSantis, for example, were to get the nomination, perhaps Donald Trump would be inclined to try and get him elected in the hopes that he would be pardoned. But then, of course, if you are the incoming Republican president and you really want to try and take a tack to the presidency that is different from Trump's, which was very much centered on, appealing to the base of the Republican Party, you may have second thoughts about just going out instantaneously and doing a pardon of Donald Trump when it's pretty obvious that he, at least according to the indictment and the evidence we have at hand, that he actually did this thing where he put national security at risk. So, yes, I think you're right, that it is the surest fire way he's going to get out of this is by being elected president. That's probably number 2, followed by number 3, actually prevailing at trial.
Yep. I think you're right. He could prevail at trial. That's always possible. But if that person who gets elected, if it's not Donald Trump and it's a Republican, that person would owe Donald Trump to the extent that his supporters got in line behind this person. So there's always a thing he would owe, in air quotes, Donald Trump. So we'll see. But I just wanted to, that thought hit me during that break that, well, if another Republican gets elected, he could get pardoned at some point. Gerald Ford did it for Richard Nixon. So, I digress. Let me move on to some other issues. So that's one side of the political coin. The other side that Fox News and the political right has had a field day with for the last 5 years is the case of Hunter Biden, the son of the current president, Joe Biden. Hunter Biden, we just lost that phone line again. This is a fascinating way to start year 3. It was horrible when we started. Now I've completely lost it. Let me tee up this story, and we'll get to it. So we were talking earlier about Donald Trump. Now we talk about Joe Biden, specifically his son, Hunter Biden, who has pled guilty to filing taxes late. And also this misdemeanor admission on tax charges allows him to avoid a much stiffer prosecution on a gun charge. At one point, he had a gun, which he was not supposed to have. So this pleading this morning guilty to misdemeanor tax charges allows him to address that issue, allows him to address this potential gun charge issue. But most importantly, it takes off the table, as it were, an issue that Republicans have been, fuming about and foaming at the mouth about for 5 years now. Hunter Biden. Well, he cut a deal. The White House, as of this moment at least, I've been on the air for 42 minutes. When I came on the air 40 minutes plus ago, the White House had not made a statement. Perhaps they have at this point. We'll check. But no statement that I saw from the White House this morning about this. But the president's son has now cut a deal, again, on tax charges and a deal that will allow him to avoid prosecution on this gun charge. Probably the best thing, if you're Hunter Biden, to get this off the table, to get your dad out of the middle of this as he heads toward a re-election campaign, because we could have found that Hunter Biden, the president's son, and the former president Donald Trump on trial at the same time. So at least this issue will not be used as it might by Republicans, given that a deal has been cut and Hunter Biden has addressed these issues of his taxes and this gun charge. So again, if you ever watch Fox News or just read anything from the right, they've been obsessed with Hunter Biden and this particular case, which now seems to be put to rest, that he's agreed to this deal. So there you have that. There's a great deal more that I want to get to politically when we come forward. Yesterday, of course, was Juneteenth. I want to talk about that. Some other political issues once we get Philip Bump back on the line here. I'm Tavis Smiley. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
The pandemic may be over, but many Angelinos could be at risk of losing the place they call home. It's important to know your rights as a residential renter in the city of LA. Did you know eviction protection still exists for unpaid COVID-19 rental debt that was due before March 31st, 2023? And that you have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice, also known as an unlawful detainer. Learn more about your rental rights at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, could potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
What's up, LA? Reparations United and Black Pact got something real special going down in historic Leimert Park. Join us on July 1st, 2023. This event is sponsored by Reparations United and the Black Pact. We got an insane lineup for y'all. Soulful Regina Bell, King of LA, The Game, Smooth Eric Benet, and none other than the one and only Rotimi, and the powerful Sounds of Blackness. We also got some special guests in the house too, y'all. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, State Senator Stephen Bradford, and more. They bringing their passion and leadership to the stage. Mark your calendars, fam. July 1st, 2023. Leimert Park. Let's come together, support each other, and make a difference. Peace, love, and reparations benefit concert and unity rally. Be there or be left out. Produced for you by Tara Perry of Black Pact and Cam Howard of Reparations United.
King C. Gillette is the modern man's answer to their facial hair. With a complete set of precision tools, the King C. Gillette line offers the perfect fit for your facial hairstyle. Want to try something great? Try the Style Master, the quintessential styling tool that every man needs to craft their style. It's a waterproof, cordless trimmer with a long-lasting 4-directional blade. It's extremely versatile and designed to edge, trim, and stubble in 4 directions on any hair length. Master your style with King C. Gillette.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to Philip Bump, Washington Post columnist. Philip, as you know, it's been a top priority for Republicans to tie Hunter Biden, the president's son, to the president, this investigation, that is, of Hunter Biden. So a deal was struck this morning with the Justice Department, and we now know that Hunter Biden has pled guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges, and this will allow him to avoid prosecution on a separate gun charge, according, again, to a court filing this morning. I said moments ago when we lost you that this is an issue that Republicans have been, hyping for 5 years now. And now this issue will go away. They won't have this issue to beat the drum on. But what do you make of this deal with Hunter Biden this morning in the Justice Department?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, this is something that had been investigated for a long time, and there certainly was a lot of heat that had been generated on the right. New York Post is on this constantly, for example. The way it had been used recently was as a juxtaposition to the charges that Donald Trump faced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, what about Hunter Biden? Hunter
Yep.
Biden never faced any charges,
Mm-hmm.
so now, of course, he faces these charges, and now they're just the punishment isn't strong enough, right? There's always some moving the goalposts. I think what's really remarkable and sort sort of under-recognized here is that Hunter Biden was also at the heart of the newest effort by congressional Republicans to try and allege that there had been this bribe paid to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. And both the House Republican in charge of that effort and former Attorney General William Barr suggested, oh, well, look to Delaware. There's this evidence of the bribe is going to turn up in Delaware in the Hunter Biden investigation. And then it comes out that there's no charges related to any sort of bribe, right? It's just we have constantly seen Hunter Biden as a sort of scapegoat of everything nefarious that has anything to do with Joe Biden whatsoever, and that this is resolved in the way that it is intensely frustrating for the right as a result.
Yeah, I guess the question is whether or not this is actually the end of this. I'm looking at some social media posts, and I see that the Republican National Committee sent out an email not long ago with this message. The Biden Inc. scandal is not just about Hunter Biden, and it goes on and on and on. So one would believe, one would hope, one would think that this may be the very end of this nonsense about Hunter Biden, trying to again tie this case Republicans are to the president. But if you take that comment, that email, that headline from the RNC seriously, that the Biden Inc. scandal is not just about Hunter Biden, they ain't gonna let this go inside the House.
Yeah, right. There's two questions here. The first is, are there any further investigations from the federal government, and are there still going to be investigations to the Republican Party? The first question is actually still up in the air. There was a quote given to CNN where the U.S. attorney who was in charge of this case said, this was an ongoing issue, although Hunter Biden's lawyer came out and said, we think that this actually resolves everything. So it's not really clear if there's still anything left with Hunter Biden, but there's no question that House Republicans are going to continue to try and make these allegations. You'll notice they always talk about payments made to the Biden family, right? Which is their way of sort of looping Joe Biden into these other things, even though there's no evidence at all that Joe Biden received a dollar. They are, it is the case that Hunter Biden pretty clearly traded on his father's name, that he was engaged in sort of, sketchy business dealings and making money off it. There's no real question about that. But they're trying to loop this back into Biden, trying to suggest that the president himself should be impeached as a result of it. And so far, neither they nor the Justice Department appear to have been able to lay any fingers on Hunter Biden in that respect.
Yep. Let me pivot now. Yesterday, of course, was Juneteenth, and Juneteenth is the anniversary of the start of this, the launching of this radio station. So as you heard me say earlier, we celebrate our second anniversary yesterday, and now off into year three pretty swiftly here. But I saw a piece you wrote recently that I want to tie into the whole Juneteenth situation, the holiday, and that is a piece you wrote called "The Political Fight Over Race Distilled." You can't talk about Juneteenth without talking about race. As I've said many times on this program, to my mind at least, racism. Race is still the most intractable issue in this country, and one does not need to look too far to see that race is going to be a central theme in this upcoming presidential election. You look at the comments made by many of their candidates, and Ron DeSantis, of course, front and center, but there are so many comments, I don't have time to unpack them. You write about this stuff every day, but so many comments and commentary offered by many of these Republican aspirants who want to be president, want to get their nomination. You think of Ron DeSantis and others who've involved themselves in this case of Daniel Penny, now charged in the subway killing of Jordan Neely, and they're raising money for him and calling him a good Samaritan. I could do this all day long if I had time. You take my point. But again, you wrote a piece called "The Political Fight Over Race Distilled." For those who didn't read that piece, unpack that for me.
Sure. So this emerges from a conversation the former President Barack Obama had with one of his old advisors, David Axelrod, last week, in which he challenged the way in which non-white Republican candidates for office, particularly Nikki Haley, the former South Carolina governor, and Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, were talking about race and talking about their own circumstances. And it really was a neat encapsulation, and by neat I mean clean, not cool. But it was a neat encapsulation of the ways in which the two sides view race, and specifically racism in the country. So Barack Obama made the very obvious case that there still exists discrimination, that there still are ways in which black people in particular are disadvantaged in the United States, not only through, law enforcement, but through economics and so on and so forth. Whereas Tim Scott and Nikki Haley come out and say, well, I am proof that you can still succeed. And of course, Barack Obama's never saying, Barack Obama, of all people, is not going to deny that people can still succeed even if they happen to be black in the United States. But the point is that when we talk about the systematic part of it, what's systematic here is there is systematic discrimination. And while America theoretically has systematic meritocracy, right, that there is a system in which the best always rise, the discrimination runs counter to that. And, of course, Tim Scott and Nikki Haley are trying to appeal to an electorate who don't want to recognize that there is systematic discrimination. In fact, white Republicans are more likely to say that white people face discrimination than they are to say that black people face discrimination, according to polling. So Nikki Haley and Tim Scott can't say that there is systematic discrimination which holds them back. Instead, they have to use their own life stories as this countervailing narrative to that idea, even though all they're doing is in the same way that so many people are like, the killing of George Floyd, that was just one bad cop.
Mm-hmm.
That is an anecdote, and they're just basically applying anecdotes of their own. Well, I happen to be elected senator, and it's like, well, cool, you did, and you also happen to be, one of a handful of black senators who've ever served in the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that distillation, I thought, was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. How central do you expect, you heard my comments moments ago, how central do you expect race to be in this presidential race?
Just hugely, right? I mean, the beating heart of Trumpism is white people feeling aggrieved. And that is what, Ron DeSantis sort of expanded that outward. So it's, white people who also happen to be anti-LGBTQ folks, right, that he expanded the grievance out in that way. But that white grievance is absolutely central to the appeal Republicans are making to their most fervent voters. It's absolutely going to carry through the primary, and it seems pretty likely to be what they focus on in the general as well.
So there are the race wars, if I can put it that way, and then there are the cultural wars. You've written about that as well.
Sure.
Talk to me about how you think the cultural wars play themselves out in this campaign, because the evidence abounds that we're not going to get away from that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things that play here. One under-recognized aspect of it is there are a lot more Hispanic and black Americans than there are gay and particularly transgender Americans. And so it's easier for Republicans to target, particularly the trans community, because there simply aren't as many of them, and there aren't as many of them who are known or friends with other people, right? Even if you happen to be a white American who is sympathetic to Ron DeSantis, you probably still know black and Hispanic people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just by virtue of being out of, but the fact that a lot of gay people are closeted and the trans people, there aren't that many of them, makes them an easier target, and I think that's part of why we're seeing them be targeted here. But yeah, I mean, it remains the case that by presenting the white, traditional, Christian, conservative population as under threat constantly, that's the way that you win votes in the Republican Party.
Yep. A couple other things I want to get to in the few minutes that we have left here. We had as a guest on this program, in fact, it was his first in-depth sit-down conversation, Cornel West, who's now running as a third-party candidate, as you know. He started out on the People's Party ticket. He has switched since to the Green Party, still running as independent, but now running on the Green Party ticket. Again, I've known Dr. West for 30-plus years. He came in this studio, and we sat for an hour conversation. It's been picked up by most news outlets. A lot of people had commentary about what he had to say in that conversation. But there are two things I want to get to with regard to Joe Biden. So RFK, Robert Kennedy Jr., is faring relatively well in some of these polls I'm looking at. Again, it's early, and who knows, but I'm seeing some decent numbers for Robert Kennedy, which could be of concern to the White House. Their position, of course, is to avoid and ignore all this stuff right now. But RFK is out there running on the Democratic ticket, wanting to be the Democratic nominee, I should say. Cornel West, of course, a third-party candidate. If he catches fire, that could have an impact. What say you about the fact that the president, although one assumes that he will be the nominee and, it will be what it will be, but there are a couple of folk, RFK and Cornel West, nipping at his heels. What say you about that, Philip Bump?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, this is. I think the best summary is this is a wildly unpredictable election cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think RFK poses much of a challenge. He's viewed much more positively by Republicans than he is Democrats, and I think as Democrats learn more about him and as his views, I mean, to the extent that people were skeptical of how the coronavirus pandemic was handled, I think most Democrats align with the opposite position of RFK on that, which I think is one of the defining things that RFK is running on. Cornel West is going to be very interesting interesting. Green parties traditionally have not really played much of a spoiler role because they don't pull that much support. Cornel West is obviously a very different candidate, and it could be the case. In 2000, we saw the Green Party and Ralph Nader actually potentially had, shifted that election in that case to George W. Bush. You never know. We've seen the past two presidential election cycles have been settled by less than 100,000 votes in a handful of states. If you have a viable Green Party candidate, whoever it is, but particularly Cornel West, it's possible that could be a difference maker as well.
Yeah, I said to Cornel West publicly and privately. Again, I've known him for 30-plus years. I reminded him that the many Democrats and folk on the left still have not forgiven Ralph Nader for that for that egregious, as they see it, egregious move to run for president. So I take your point. Again, I've said that to Cornel West. I hope you know what you're doing here, because all the folk who love you today may hate you in perpetuity if you end up getting into a Ralph Nader situation where you can make a difference and end up being a spoiler. And again, having said that to him, he's still running, so I digress in that regard. Philip Bump is Washington Post columnist, who I've been honored to have on for this hour, as we do from time to time. Philip, thanks for your insights. Good to have you on. We'll do it again, my friend. All the best to you.
Of course, let me know. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Just like that, hour one is gone as we start year 3 here on KBLA Talk 1580. 2 hours to go, two more great hours. In the next hour, we'll talk about the black working class. In our third hour, we'll introduce you to 2 of the new talk show hosts on KBLA Talk 1580, again, as we start year 3. We're glad to have you listening today to KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the black and families of Pittsburgh's neighborhoods need to be free from violence and to end the pattern of killing and loss. Johnsonville LLC is recalling more than 40